I wanted to work on my business. I didn't want to work in it. And so I straight away was like, right, I need a team. I can't do this on my own. Actually, no, sorry, I'm lying to you. Let me back this up a bit. That occurred when I had made 17 beds in a row. So I was like, after I got my first client, the next ones came on fairly quickly, and I was like, I can do this. I can do this on my own. Well, I couldn't, and it was the day that I made 17 beds in a row, and I went home and I went, this is crap. Like,
So
whose idea
you were
was this?
cleaning. You were cleaning the
Yes.
properties too.
I'm terrible, Kirby. I am the worst cleaner in the world, but I was cleaning, I was setting
Oh
these
wow.
properties up, I was doing everything to start with. And this is going to resonate with a lot of listeners right now who are probably out there listening to this podcast while they're cleaning right now or answering guest communications, because it's very hard to trust in others and to delegate to others. I thought I knew it all. No one's going to do it better than me. So here I am doing all the cleaning. At the end of that day, there were two options. I was either going to give it all away and go and find a job, or I needed help. And so very fortunately, the next day I sat down with a gentleman that I had been selling advertising with, Glenn, who's 70 years old. Glenn said to me, I don't want to stop work. He had been told he had to retire from his job. I don't want to stop work. I want to keep earning an income. I want to do it on my own terms, and I want to be my own boss. And I said, well, have you got a mop, a bucket, a smartphone, and a vehicle? Yes, yes, yes. And I said, here's 10 properties. And I want you to look after all the guest-facing day-to-day tasks. I want you to do the communication on the app, meet the people when they arrive. So yes, we were doing personal check-ins at that stage. This is 2016 to 2019. No smart locks, like how the industry has changed. So he's doing the check-ins, he's doing the cleans, he's doing the laundry, but he's also knows that property inside out, so that if there is a broken wine glass, he's the first to notice it. And so he took over those 10 properties, and it was like a little franchise model that I'd set up. So to run the numbers for your listeners, I was charging 25% commission as a property manager, keeping that cleaning fee. Glenn, my first co-host that came on in my model, my structure, was being paid 6% commission plus the cleaning fee, the whole cleaning fee. So for him, he was able to have a piece of the pie. He had ownership. He was loyal. His KPIs, the key performance indicators that I set for him, were just based purely on the review system of Airbnb. So I said to him, we need 4.8 stars and higher. If you drop below that, I will get you some more training. But otherwise, you stay above that and you show me capacity that you can take on more, and I'm going to go and get more properties and give them to you. And so while he was looking after the day-to-day operations, I was able to go off and look after the part of the business that I knew best, and that was marketing, acquiring new properties, onboarding those properties, and dealing with homeowners. And that's kind of how it started. So we ended up having 14 Glens that were co-hosts, and it's like a business in a box. I was basically able to delegate a number of properties to that co-host. They looked after the guest-facing tasks, and they got a piece of the pie. And so they were encouraging people to stay longer because they knew that they'd make more money. They were able to, offer upsells, which I then did some splits with, and the upsells were tours and travel and experiences, which I see Mr. Chesky has now rolled in under Airbnb again. So, but it really worked, Kirby. And that with that structure, I simply was able to scale to 130 properties within 3 years, really easily, actually. So by just putting on more co-hosts.
That is amazing. That is amazing. And again, another example of a win-win. You set it up with Glenn. He's probably had no interest in trying to market and create this from scratch, but you hand him like you said, a business in a box, which, he's got time on his hands. He has the skill set to do it. The incentives were aligned. I think that's so huge too. It's not like you're paying him hourly, very motivated to try to increase revenue, which helps you and helps the owner. I love it as you explain that. What were some of the challenges that came up? I'm sure there were challenges with some of the Glens that you started working with. What did you learn, or advice that you'd have for others who might want to start using this type of model?
Sure. I'm going to tell you a funny story. It's a bit of a rude story, so if you're precious, you need to block your ears right now. But Glenn, so he was my first co-host, and then I started putting on extra co-hosts, and I thought, well, who better to train them than the person that's already knows what he's doing, Glenn? And he was a much better cleaner than I was. But I remember one day we put two young backpackers. They were early 20s, gorgeous girls. We said, go out with Glenn, learn the ropes, learn everything that he does. And of course, he showed them how to clean the property. But Glenn decides that, well, in Glenn's world, he cleans the bathrooms last and he cleans the showers last. He cleans the showers naked. So these poor girls,
That's amazing,
got the full frontal and didn't know what to do with themselves. Needless to say, they didn't work out. They decided that it wasn't the right role for them. But it certainly taught me a thing or two, that I've got to actually keep training people, or not assume that they are going to
that they
clean
clean clothes
on.
Yeah.
So that was one of the little, learnings for me. But, everything from learning, what to do with laundry. Like we used every different trick in the book. We did the laundry ourselves, turned our houses into Chinese laundries, we would say, with sheets hanging everywhere. I think my husband learned how to fold a fitted sheet pretty quickly. But we did that. We outsourced, we went to laundromats. I think we made every mistake in the book in trying to figure out the right way to do things. And I think now, if you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, I want to scale my business, I want to turn my hobby into a business, can I just say how lucky you are that you've got people like Kirby, you've got myself, you've got others in the industry who are willing to share the strategies and the structure and the techniques, the tasks that we have done, tried and tested already, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I think that's really important, that now if you're looking to get into this industry, it's a lot easier than it was way back then, when we had nothing to go from. There were no YouTube channels, there was no free training. At least now, people can listen to a podcast and go, okay, what should I do with revenue management or folding fitted sheets?
Yeah. Do you recommend that strategy today, or do you think using like VAs or something like that would be a better strategy? What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, look, if I was to start again today, I often ask myself this: what would I do? And I would probably put that same structure in place that I had with the co-hosts. However, the one mistake that I made, and I would change it now, is that I was giving Glenn 10 properties to look after 24/7. He was so, like you said, he didn't have the business brain, or the co-hosts were coming in with not the foresight to start up a business themselves, but they were very grateful to receive this business in a box. So he had 10 properties to look after, and he was hungry for the money. He was hungry. He didn't want to stop working. So unfortunately, he probably slept with his phone. He didn't have a break. Now, in hindsight, I should have put on virtual assistants or some sort of, now we've got AI messaging like HostBuddy AI. I love those guys at the moment. They're probably one of my favorite companies in the space. But I would have put someone like that into the situation, so that from, say, 6 o'clock at night till 10 o'clock the next morning, Glenn didn't have to answer any guest communications. It was something that, looking back now, it was probably a bit of burnout that was caused with some of the co-hosts, because they were so excited to be in this business, and they were so excited to earn money that they didn't want to miss a phone call or a message from the guest. So,
and I see that a lot with hosts, just in general, that like they start off and it works really great. They're like, we got to scale this, and then they scale it, and all of a sudden, like, they hit that point where it's like they never get a second to do anything else. And so it's
Agreed.
almost like they're forced into the point of leaning into to help at some point. What was it for you then, as you scaled this so quickly, and it was working? What was sort of the linchpin? Like, why were you? I mean, obviously, you ended up selling your business. What was the reason for that? Why not just continue
Yeah.
to grow it? Was there a point where it was like too big, or?
I could say it was just really good psychic ability, knowing that COVID was about
Yeah.
to come 2 months later.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. I mean, the timing was impeccable. It was the end of 2019. I get this knock on the door from these guys saying, "We want to buy your business." Now, my initial reaction was, "No, don't touch it. It's my baby. I've grown this, into what it is." But I was 3.5 years in, and I had written $1 Million Host, which I've strategically placed behind me as a
Nice.
self-promotion. $1 Million Host had gone bestseller around the world, and I was starting to get invitations like from Airbnb and Brian Chesky to go and visit their offices or fly across to speak at an international conference. So I was getting all these really exciting opportunities. And I realized I had to take a really good hard look at what I wanted out of life. And this is something that I remind people that I coach over and over again, is to reevaluate and reassess where you're sitting, either with your partner or yourself, on a regular basis. What are your likes? What are your dislikes? What gives you energy? What drains you of energy? And I realized that my passion had changed. My passion for speaking with homeowners, speaking with guests, maybe had deteriorated, whereas my love for educating and really helping other people recreate the success that I've seen in short-term rentals, that had really gone up, and I was getting my excitement and my joy out of seeing other people succeed. And so education really was the shining light. So the book had gone bestseller, these opportunities came up, but I'm going to also be really honest, and I don't mention this a lot on any other podcasts. Stress is not my friend. I already mentioned to you that stress in a corporate setting burnt me out a few years earlier. Now, the stress of knowing that you've got 130 properties and, anywhere from maybe 400 to 500 people per night that are staying in Julie's property, that stressed me out. Even though I had a really good team and I had a really good structure and systems, and it was at the stage where I was only working 10 hours a week. So I would turn up to the office and the girls at the office would say, "Stop, what are you doing? Don't touch anything," because they knew my business better than I did. But I always had in the back of my head, 400 to 500 people. I'm responsible for 400 to 500 people. And that stress probably gave me the push that I needed to say, okay, I'm going to sign off, sell my business. But I was very, very, very fussy about who I was selling to. I wanted to make sure that the new owners were going to retain that structure that I'd set up, look after Glenn and his naked shower cleaning, whatever he wants to do. But I wanted to make sure that my staff were looked after, my homeowners, there was no changes really for them, and that people still thought they were staying at Julie's property. So they still, to this day, have to log in to Airbnb into my account with my birthday. So it's a wonder I don't get birthday cards from these new owners every year. But it was something that I thought, right, it's the right fit. The adoptive parents can have the baby that I've built, and I can go off and help start educating people and create masterminds and retreats and write more books. And so that was the reason for selling.
Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting. I appreciate that insight and the honesty there. It's funny because I have been approached to manage other people's Airbnbs quite a bit. And it was something I considered for a while. But I think different personality types are very different. And I had to really do some introspection around, like, what is it that gets me excited? And also, why did I get in this in the first place? And it was to not have bosses. And I'm the type, very similarly, that if if I'm managing on 4 other people, I feel like they're the boss, and I'm like have to get every detail perfect, and they're looking over my shoulder all the time. And so I can imagine how stressful that would be with 130,
Oh, it would
130
be
bosses looking
crazy.
over your shoulder. So
Actually,
yeah.
just on that though, Kirby, I think that micromanagement that you feel if you're in property management and you're listening in right now, it is real. Like that micromanagement is real, but you have got the power to put some boundaries in place, and and this is something that it took me about probably 2 years to learn, was that I could set boundaries. I could make sure that when I'm onboarding a property, that I say to that homeowner, I am only available between these hours of the day. I'll ring you. You don't have to ring me. You just need to, and it was a reassurance thing as well. You just sit back, relax, and every month I'm going to send you a big fat check. I didn't make any promises on how fat that check was, but I learned very quickly that it's okay to say no to homeowners as well. If a homeowner is micromanaging you, I really took pleasure in saying, I think you should self-manage. And at the end of the day, fire those homeowners. So, if they're taking up too much of your time, they're probably not worth it, no matter how amazing their properties are.
Yeah, absolutely. So when these people knocked on your door, how did you evaluate what the business was worth at that point?
Oh,
If you weren't pursuing it, what did that look like?
that was probably the hardest thing ever, because in 2019, there was not a lot of history of other people selling short-term rental companies. Unlike now, where there is a valuation, you can work out on your yearly profit or management fees. There's a multiplier of about 2.5 to 3, I think, at the moment, depending where you are in the world, and also depending on what sort of business you've got set up. So please know that I'm throwing these figures out there, but it is really something that you need to get a proper valuation on, depending on your software and what your contracts are like. But when somebody came and knocked on my door, I had no idea. I was, deer in headlights. I'm not sure. And so that negotiation went back and forth. Now, unfortunately, I can't divulge the amount that I sold for, but it was enough to never have to work again.
Yeah.
And it was the ultimate payday.
Nice.
But it was really, it was an interesting way that they approached it too. And I'll just let you know that with the sale of my business, they gave me about 75% of the funds on settlement day. But then we had an earn-out period. So I had to continue working for that company. I got a salary to continue working as their manager, but I worked for them for another 3-4 months, I think it was, to continue to earn whatever money was coming in. We just went 50-50. And then until I got to the period that I had I collected the full amount. But then they also, very cleverly, this company gave me shares in their company. So I am now a major shareholder of a company called Home Time in Australia. And very, very smart, because that meant that I didn't ever want to, but I was not going to go and start a business in opposition. So that anti-competition clause that was already in there was really strong, and I was always going to refer business to them. So that was really very smart. And if you're listening in right now, you're thinking of selling or purchasing a portfolio. Just think about, what options, how can you structure the deal to make sure that, that it might be a win-win for both parties.